r/NoSleep. When the mirror knocks, do not answer. It began as a superstition, an old wives' tale passed down in hushed whispers. Never knock on a mirror at night, my grandmother used to warn. And if it knocks back, never answer. I hadn't thought about that warning in years, until my roommate, Sam, found the antique mirror at a flea market. It was massive, the kind you'd expect in a Victorian mansion, with an ornate gold frame that looked far too grand for our cramped apartment. $20, Sam exclaimed, grinning as he hauled it through the door. Can you believe it? It looks haunted, I joked, only half kidding. That night, as I brushed my teeth, I caught a glimpse of the mirror from the hallway. Something about its surface was off. The reflection seemed slower, like it lagged a half-second behind real life. I blamed it on my tired eyes and went to bed. At midnight, the knocking started. 3 sharp raps echoed through the apartment, loud enough to wake me. I stumbled out of bed, expecting to find Sam at the door. But when I checked, the hallway was empty. Then I saw it. The mirror. It had fogged up, as though someone had breathed on it. Written across the glass, in jagged streaks, were the words, "Knock, knock." My heart pounded. I called for Sam, but there was no answer. Slowly, I approached the mirror. The apartment was dead silent, yet I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven. Tap. I froze. The sound had come from inside the mirror. Tap. Tap. "Sam?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Is this some kind of joke?" The reflection shifted. Not much, just enough to notice. My mirrored self wasn't quite me anymore. Its eyes were darker, sunken, and it smiled when I didn't. "Knock back," it whispered, though my lips never moved. I stumbled away, my hands shaking. The lights flickered, and my phone buzzed. A notification popped up. Rule 1, don't knock. Rule 2, don't break the mirror. Rule 3, don't trust your reflection. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Was this some kind of prank? Some bizarre app synced to the mirror? My phone buzzed again, this time with a new message. Rule 4, if it knocks, do not answer. Before I could process what was happening, I heard Sam's voice from the other room. "What's going on? Why are you up?" Relief washed over me. "Sam. Thank God. There's something wrong with the mirror." I stopped. He stepped into the hallway, but his reflection wasn't there. The mirror only showed me. "What's wrong?" Sam asked, tilting his head in confusion. My stomach turned. Where's your reflection?" He turned to the mirror, and for a moment, his face went blank. Then he smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far. "Guess it's broken," he said, his voice flat. The lights flickered again, and I caught movement in the corner of my eye. In the mirror, Sam was standing there. But the real Sam was next to me. The one in the mirror waved. "Knock, knock," it mouthed. Before I could react, the real Sam, or whoever this was, reached for the mirror. He raised his fist. "No," I shouted, lunging for him. "Don't knock." The sound echoed like thunder, reverberating through my skull. The mirror's surface rippled, and the apartment seemed to tilt, like reality itself was bending. The reflection of Sam laughed, a guttural, inhuman sound, as it stepped through the glass. It wasn't a reflection anymore. It grabbed Sam, pulling him into the mirror. He screamed, thrashing wildly, but it was no use. The surface swallowed him whole, leaving only his reflection behind. It turned to face me, its grin even wider now. "You're next," it said. I ran. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and bolted out of the apartment. I didn't stop running until I reached the street, gasping for air. When I dared to look back, the apartment was dark, and the mirror was gone. Now, every night at midnight, I hear the knocking. It doesn't matter where I am, at home, at a friend's house, even in a hotel. It always finds me. I've stopped looking in mirrors altogether. But sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I see it, my reflection, watching, waiting. And I know, one day, I'll have to answer. But that day wasn't today. I stayed away from mirrors for weeks, refusing to even glance at my reflection in windows or polished surfaces. I couldn't afford to let it lure me in. The knocking never stopped. Midnight, every night, the sound came. No matter where I was or how far I traveled, it followed. 3 deliberate taps that seemed to echo through my skull, shaking my resolve. Sometimes I thought I heard laughter after the knocks, low and guttural, like whatever was behind that mirror was mocking me for running. I tried to explain it to people. My family thought I was losing my mind. Friends told me to see a therapist. Even Laura, who had teased me about the mirror, avoided my calls after I broke down and told her what had happened to Sam. One night, I decided I couldn't keep running. If I wanted to survive, I needed to understand what was happening. I returned to the apartment. The door creaked open as if it had been waiting for me. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of burnt wax and mildew. The mirror wasn't there anymore, but the faint outline of its frame was still etched into the wall, as though it had left a scar on the apartment itself. Sam's phone sat on the coffee table where he'd left it that night. The screen was cracked, the battery long dead, but when I picked it up, it buzzed faintly in my hand. A single word appeared on the shattered display. Come. Against every instinct screaming at me to leave, I followed. The phone seemed to guide me, pulling me toward a storage closet at the end of the hall. My breath caught in my throat as I opened it. Inside was the mirror. It wasn't the same, not entirely. Its once golden frame was blackened, twisted, as though it had been scorched in a fire. The glass shimmered faintly, not reflecting the room but something else entirely, a dark, endless void where shapes shifted and flickered just out of focus. The knocks came again, louder this time. Knock. 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 The surface rippled, and then a hand, pale and skeletal, pressed against the glass from the other side. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the phone. A voice followed, deep and distorted, like 100 whispers speaking at once. You left him. You broke the rules. I couldn't breathe. Sam? The hand pressed harder, and the surface of the mirror bulged outward like liquid. He's still here. You can save him. If you're brave enough to answer. The phone buzzed again, and a message appeared. Rule 5, enter at your own risk. I stared at the mirror, at the rippling glass and the skeletal hand clawing for freedom. My chest tightened as I thought of Sam, of his face as he was dragged into the void. Could I really leave him there? Could I live with myself if I didn't try? I set the phone down, took a deep breath, and placed my hand against the glass. It was cold, so cold it burned. The world around me tilted as the surface gave way, pulling me in. The transition was nauseating. I felt like I was falling and floating all at once, my body weightless and heavy at the same time. When I finally landed, the ground beneath me was soft and sticky, like tar. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and a faint, eerie light illuminated the space. I wasn't alone. Figures moved in the shadows, their shapes grotesque and inhuman. Some had too many limbs, others had faces that seemed to melt into nothingness. They whispered as they passed, their voices brushing against my ears like icy tendrils. Outsider. Lost. Unworthy. I stumbled forward, my eyes searching desperately for any sign of Sam. The tar-like ground clung to my feet, slowing me with every step. Sam. I called out, my voice echoing unnaturally in the void. Don't. A faint voice answered. It was weak, barely audible, but it was him. Don't. Come. I followed the sound, pushing through the oppressive air. The shapes in the shadows grew more agitated, their whispers rising into a chaotic cacophony. Finally, I found him. Sam was chained to a massive pillar of black stone, his body gaunt and pale. His eyes, once full of life, were sunken and hollow. The chains weren't metal, they writhed like living things, pulsing and tightening with every movement he made. Sam. I ran to him, grabbing at the chains. They burned my hands, but I didn't let go. You shouldn't have come, he croaked, his voice breaking. It wants both of us now. Before I could respond, the shadows converged. From the darkness, the figure of a man, or what had once been a man, emerged. Its skin was cracked and blackened, its eyes glowing like embers. It smiled, revealing rows of jagged teeth. You broke the rules, it said, its voice dripping with malice. But I'm feeling generous. One of you can leave. I froze, my mind racing. What do you mean? The figure gestured lazily, and the chains binding Sam loosened slightly. One of you will take his place. The other will be free. Choose. Sam shook his head violently. No. Don't do it. Get out of here. I looked at him, at the broken shell of my best friend, and then at the creature. Its smile widened, as though it could already taste my fear. I'll stay, I said, my voice trembling. Let him go. No. Sam screamed, struggling against the chains. You can. The creature laughed, A sound that rattled my very bones. Brave. Foolish. Very well. The chains released Sam completely, sending him sprawling to the ground. Before I could react, they shot toward me, wrapping around my arms and legs with a vice-like grip. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, as though they were draining the very essence of my being. "Run," I choked out. "Go." Sam hesitated, tears streaming down his face, but the void was already shifting, pulling him away. The last thing I saw was his figure disappearing into the light. Time passed differently in the void. Seconds felt like hours, hours like days. The chains kept me bound, feeding on my life, my memories. The creature watched, its glowing eyes never leaving me. But I wasn't alone. Other prisoners were there, hidden in the shadows. Some had been there so long they had become part of the void itself, their bodies twisted and unrecognizable. They whispered to me, their voices filled with despair. No one escapes. It always wins. But I held on to one thought: Sam was free. I had saved him. One day, the creature approached, its smile as cruel as ever. "You have lasted longer than most. Impressive." I didn't respond. My body was too weak, my voice barely a whisper. It leaned closer. "Do you wish to leave?" I stared into its burning eyes, the weight of my choice crushing me. But then I saw it, a faint crack in the glass-like surface of the void behind the creature. A way out. Using the last of my strength, I lunged, breaking free of the chains for just a moment. I threw myself at the crack, shattering the barrier between the void and reality. I woke up in my apartment, gasping for air. The mirror was gone, the knocking silenced. Sam was there, sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. "You're alive," he whispered, his voice breaking. I nodded, too exhausted to speak. We destroyed every mirror in the apartment that night. I don't know if it's truly over, but I do know one thing. I'll never answer the knock again.